So if we haven't met before, my name is Mark Isselhardt. I work for UVM Extension, based here out of the Proctor Maple Research Center. My position is statewide, and it's really designed to cover all aspects of maple production, from tree to syrup quality in the bottle. I don't do a whole lot on the business and marketing side. That's something that Mark Cannella and Chris Lindgren have really jumped in and done a lot of work in, but pretty much everything upstream of that, I have a piece in. Thank you all for coming. I'm just part of the team of this grant. Dana Rupert has been obviously corresponding with all of you. She's going to do a brief rundown on the project that is kind of funding this training and what we're trying to get out of it. Other people on the project, Mark Cannella, UVM Extension as well. He's going to be part of the program. You all have your agendas. And the agenda might get moved around a little bit given the development with Chris not being here. In fact, it's going to be changed right off the bat because he won't be doing what I'm doing, which is sort of an introduction and a welcome. Show of hands, how many people have been here before? So, maybe half, if something like that. I'll do a super brief introduction about the facility and what it's all about. And then we'll jump into to Mark Cannella's part. Dana's going to talk about the grant as well. We are going to have some indoor time, obviously, and then we're going to have some time for mingling, and we're going to have some outdoor time for day one. So we're excited to have you here, and it's trying our best to have it not be just a one-way delivery. It's definitely meant to stimulate some discussion and be productive in that way. Just by way of introduction, so the Proctor Maple Research Center was actually, the land was purchased by Governor Mortimer Proctor. That's where we get the name from, heir to the large Marble family in southwestern Vermont. And he purchased the property and 2 days later donated it to UVM, but with a very specific goal, and that is to do research into production of maple sap and syrup. So it's actually written into the deed, that we have to be doing maple research here. So whatever hot new thing Tony wants to do, it's just he can't have the property, unless he fully goes maple. So I know he's been hoping for that, but it's not going to happen. So. So the property, just over 200 acres. Was an old hill farm, not anything particularly special. There was sugaring being done. At the time, obviously, it was all buckets. It was very much the standard technology at the time. The founders of the place, two botanists, Dr. Jim Marvin, Dr. Fred Taylor, began their work pretty much right after. So the land was purchased in 45. 47 was really the first year of research up here. And in fact, last year we celebrated the 75th anniversary of research up here. So pretty big milestone. There had been research being done at UVM onto maple, well before that. The late 1800s, there was pretty robust work being done, mostly on campus or at contributing sugar bushes, but there wasn't a dedicated facility or land to do that research. In fact, some of the collaborating sugar makers were in Cambridge and not too far from here. So Jim Marvin, those of you who are involved at all in maple might recognize the last name. His son David Marvin went through UVM and then started Butternut Mountain Farm. They're a large maple producer, but also they buy roughly half the Vermont crop and sell syrup, in lots of different forms, including private label and all over the place. So they have a major footprint in the bulk market of maple syrup production. And together with Dr. Fred Taylor, they did some interesting work in the beginning about sap flow, understanding the sort of the basic mechanisms, more in a field setting. Some of that early work that I was mentioning was done on individual trees, and some of the work they did up here was a little bit more of a field setting. They also, Dr. Taylor looked at the relationship between, even then it was understood that certain trees were sweeter than others, even within the species of sugar maple. And there was not a lot of understanding or not even a lot of data as to what extent that really was happening. And through lots of years of careful data collection from individual trees year after year, multiple times during each sugaring season, he was able to show that the pattern, if we're all trees that are being tapped, there'll be a few sweet ones and then some that aren't as sweet. And their relationship amongst each other will hold up. Even if the absolute values go up and down from year to year for various reasons, there tends to be sweeter trees in each group. And I'm not going to pretend to know who in this group is going to be the sweet trees and which ones are the watered down ones, but it was really important back then because there was no reverse osmosis. So you had to boil raw sap. So you're talking 40 to 1, 50 to 1, 60 to 1, depending on how dilute that sap is, huge impact. And so sweet tree research was really important. Once RO became available, and that really didn't happen, the technology was late 50s, kind of early 60s, but to be commercially available, you're really talking like 70s, 80s is when you could actually really buy a unit that wasn't, as big as a shipping container and, barely processed sap. So pretty much right after that, though, the industry saw the value because it is such a huge energy-intensive process to boil sap. So sweet tree research really kind of lost a lot of its emphasis, although work continued at places including like Cornell, and that work, those trees are still in the ground and can still be utilized. But from the practical aspect, the applied aspect, and I think Adam might agree that once you could buy a machine, turn it on, and basically, eliminate 80% of the water out of your sap, the real bulk of producers, stopped paying a whole lot of attention to sweet trees on a commercial scale. On a limited scale, for sure, people would still try to select for those sweet trees, if possible. Year after year, different researchers come through. There was work, Dr. Maria Franca-Morselli was a microbiologist. She had a lab on campus. She did a lot of work on the chemistry of maple syrup, why syrup color is the way it is, how do you make the best quality, what contamination is involved, how do you do essentially sterile tapping to prevent any kind of microbial contamination. She did a lot of work there. And we've continued the last 30 years, 25, 30 years that the work has been focused on a lot of different topics, including the most achievable high yields in a sustainable way, how to produce the most efficient maple syrup, all while keeping an eye on tree health. Tim Perkins, Dr. Perkins, just retired last year after 26 years as the director up here. So a lot of that work was under his leadership, and the work continues. And interestingly enough, some of those initial questions that happened were being asked 100 years ago by even before the Proctor Center was founded, continue to be looked at, and in the context of modern high vacuum, modern technology being applied to sugaring. So I'll talk about some projects in my section, but just wanted to give you a quick overview of the facility. It is part of the plant biology department, which is in the College of Ag and Life Science. So the mission has always included a dual basic and applied research focus. So since the very starting, there's always been this, how do we understand the physiology, but how does it get applied in the form that a maple producer can find valuable? So there'll be time. This is actually the original lab. We still have it. When we go outside, you can take a peek. Kind of like an ice fishing shanty, but some pretty interesting work was done out of there in the 40s and 50s.